The cake, we have 2 cakes. The one we're going to eat says Happy Birthday, Marty. The other one is celebrating Marty's life, just in case. But I'm super excited to be giving this roast because, I mean, growing up in my parents' house, I have to say, you probably know I've been doing stand-up comedy recently. And growing up in my parents' house, I feel like I was destined to be a comic. Either that or be someone with severe depression. Some would argue there's really no difference. But Dad, if you look around, and being serious here, look around, this is your legacy. And I have numbers here that I can't remember, so I'm just going to read them. We have your friends here, 4 biological daughters, 2 adopted sons, 13 grandchildren, 9 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way. That's huge. So if you ever wonder where the company 23andMe came from, this is it. And what I find, so my dad has great genes, right? I mean, just look how great he looks. Great genes. I mean, those are Bill Blatt's, right? And what I was thinking about, so all the grandkids, all the great-grandkids, and I thought, I mean, what I find most amazing is that he has so much in common with the grandkids and the great-grandkids. Right? The grandkids and great-grandkids love family, so does my father. The great-grandkids and the grandkids are artistic, so is my father. The little kids shop at Forever 21, my father shops at Forever 90. And the list goes on. So I thought what I would do is like pick out key points of my dad's life and just kind of focus on those. And I'll try not to repeat what I said at his 80th birthday. But at this point, he won't remember what I said. As long as there's no video, we're fine. So my father, if you saw the pictures, he was one of 8 kids, right? And I wrote down all the names because I was afraid I would forget. So starting with the sisters, there was Mati, Faye, and Minnie. Oh, I'm not saying in order. Oh, if I had to remember in order, forget. So Faye, Mati, then Minnie. And then there were 5 kids. Okay. And then there were 5 boys, and in no specific order. There was my father, there is my father, and his other brothers were Schwitzy, Schlumpy, Schleppy, and Fetchy. What a crew they were. Yeah, my father in the 70s. And they all grew up in South Philly. And if you've never heard the stories of them growing up, then you just haven't been listening. They grew up in a candy store. Right? Didn't have a lot of money. But they grew up around all this candy, all these sweets. And it was the great old-fashioned candy. And my father being 90, at the time they just called it candy. It wasn't old-fashioned. It was new. And they had, let's see. And they also had this great milkshake maker. And if we're lucky, after the party, Harriet will invite us over. So I think she's the one who absconded with that milkshake maker. I'm still a little bitter about that. And so they grew up in this little house in South Philly, and if you can believe, and this is serious, all 5 boys shared the same room. Right. 5 boys in the same room. Can you imagine what Taco Tuesday was like in that household? I can. And then down the street was this Russian bathhouse that was owned by some of his other relatives, his uncles.
My mother's brothers.
His mother's brothers owned a Russian bathhouse. And that's 2 of them. And that's where my father would spend days with the men. They'd be naked, they'd be in the schwitz, sweating all day, getting salt scrubs, getting something called a plate sick and a pot chick, which is where they get hit by with palm fronds by the men there. And all the men would just hang out naked for hours. So if you think about it, my dad was part of the early gay rights movement. Early gay rights movement. Yeah. So most of you probably know this story, starting out pretty into his career. Most of you probably know how he started his career. There's a story out in the foyer. So he was going to become an electrician. And one day there was a substitute teacher who had like a funny nose or something, and my dad did a caricature of it. And he got caught. and sent to the principal's office. And that kind principal suggested that my father go to art school, which he did, and spend his whole career as a graphic designer. And being serious here, as a child, it was very cool to walk around places and see corporate logos that he had done, like the Franklin Mint, Smith Klein, and the Littman Jewelers in the mall. And I know that my father's favorite, because I asked you this when I was in Florida last, my father's favorite project is a logo that's still being used, hopped by Alex Trebek from Jeopardy, Colonial Penn Insurance. Yeah, Colonial Penn. Now, yeah, so his graphic design legacy lives on. And my favorite, honestly, was when my father was commissioned by Lee Annenberg to do a hand-lettered anniversary card for her husband, Walter. And if you don't know who Walter Annenberg was, just walk the campus of Penn. You'll see his name on several of the buildings. And he owned, among other things, TV Guide. So Jody knows that I hate to spend money on cards, so I can only imagine the horror on Lee's face when she turned that card over and it said $500. It was one expensive card. But the story you don't know, and I'm here to tell, because my father is just too proud to tell the story of his first art project ever as a graphic designer. And I don't know that any of you know this story. But he was young at the time, so this is like 80 years ago. And he was a runner back then. He was a runner. And one day he was out doing hill repeats up Mount Sinai. And he ran into a friend of his old friend Moishe. You might know him as Moses. And Moishe said, hey Marty, I was just talking to the big guy. He gave me these 10 tweets. And he wants to know what I should do with them. And my father said, you know what, I just got these stone tablets, let me see what I can do. And the rest, as they say, is history. Right. And my father's always been a proud Jew, and that's clearly the case. And he's been practicing Judaism all his life, which boggles my mind, because if he's been practicing for this long, why is he still practicing? I mean, come on, get it right. And in the last decade, he's fulfilled the 11th commandment. Does anyone know what that is? The 11th commandment? Moving to the promised land of Florida. If you spend only 5 minutes with him, you'll know that he lives in the villages that he loves. And he's like an ambassador for the villages. It's been the fountain of youth. And I love his enthusiasm. I mean, anything in the villages is just great. Like, he'll tell me stories. Eric, you can't believe your mother and I go to this place for a sandwich. We split the sandwich. We each get a bag of chips, a soda, $5.50. That's it. That's it. In the villages. Senior crazy. Senior special. And they're so active. I mean, you don't sit around for more than 5 minutes. They're always going here, going there, on cruises, out to dinners. You're in your golf cart, right? Which scares me, if you want to be honest. And golfing 4 times a week. Let's think about this. 90 years old, golfs 4 times a week. Do you realize what that means? No. My dad waxes balls more times a week than most men in this room. I said most. And my parents stay active, if you know what I mean. In fact, just the other day, my mom was telling me that they were doing this whole strip club routine. And by strip club, I mean he stripped and she clubbed him. And the thing I think I value the most is the advice my father gives me. I mean, you've all gotten the same advice, right? I say my father's frugal. Some would say he's cheap. Let's be honest, okay? And we all know the messages. Where's Scott? right? When Scott and I were growing up, we'd leave a room and my father would follow behind and shut the lights off and he'd say, "What do you think, I work for the electric company?" And we'd say, "No, but we kind of wish you do because their kids get to live with the lights on." Or how about during dinner time when he'd say, "Clean your plates, there are kids starving in Africa." And I'd say, "When you see the runs I get from Mom's tuna fish and French fry casserole, you're going to wish we all lived in Africa." But my favorite was in the winter. My father came up with this plan to save money on heat by turning it off. So at night, he would turn the heat off and he'd hook up this kerosene heater at the end of the hallway. Do you remember the kerosene heater? Yeah.
We ended up with it.
Oh, good. Yeah, and that kerosene heater kind of smelled like kerosene. Yeah. Yeah. So in order to get rid of that smell, what he would do is put a pot of water on the heater, and when the water boiled, he'd throw lemons in it. And it was always the same thing the next morning. Scott and I would wake up, we'd have headaches, we'd be dizzy, we couldn't remember our math facts, but we'd always have fresh lemonade. Because as my father would always say, when life gives you lemons, put them in a pot of boiling water on your kerosene heater to save money. That's it, yeah. No, that's not it. That's it. That's it for his frugality. But the best advice is how to make millions. I mean, I don't know if he's let you in on this, but my father is great at giving advice on how to make millions. Yeah, anyone in here can argue you cannot time the stock market. My father can. He knows exactly when a stock is going to go up the day after he sells it. That's when the stock doubles. Exactly. And if you don't believe me, just wait for the will. You'll see. That's it. But so just getting a little serious at the end here. So I just want to thank you. I mean, it's being serious here. Just want to thank you for being my dad. So you've been in my life for the last 42 years or so. And when I tell people my history, and I say that my biological father died when I was just turning 4, my mom remarried, thanks to Millie who's here. You adopted us. I mean, people invariably say, "Oh, so he's your adopted father." And I always respond by saying, "No, he's my father." So I really do appreciate that, and I thank you. So I just want to end by saying, and then we'll get to people with real talent, but I just want to end by saying, thank you very much. I love you, and just take all this in, being surrounded by all the people who love you, aside from the tax collectors. Happy 90th birthday. Thank you.